When using a compass, there are two things you need to know: magnetic north and your azimuth, which is the direction you need to go to reach your goal. In the United States, our political and moral compasses are off track, but it doesn't have to be that way. Come with me as I explore realistic options on how to improve our country. This is Off Azimuth. This was not a planned episode. The original episode 5 will still be released next Tuesday. However, a recent series of news articles caught my attention and warranted a mini episode. I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but when there's a lack of information, we must seek data and logically driven arguments to figure out what is happening. That's what I intend to present to you today. So come with me as Off Azimuth explores the dark side of scientific history. In February of 1945, Allied forces recognized that the end of Nazi Germany was all but guaranteed. The Battle of the Bulge, albeit a violent and difficult push across Europe, had ended in January, and Allied forces were crossing the Rhine River, nearing Germany's borders. There was a palpable excitement at the idea of bringing an end to the Nazi war machine, but not all the Allied leadership was focused solely on Germany's defeat. At the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, a new division was established, the T-Force. The mission of the T-Force was singular. It was to evaluate nearly 5,000 German individuals, experts in synthetic rubber and oil catalysts, jet and rocket-propelled aircraft, naval equipment, aeromedical research, military armor innovators, and V-2 rocket designers. Of the 5,000 candidates, the T-Force, by then updated with the new mission moniker Operation Overcast, sought to find individuals willing to assist in shortening the Japanese War and to aid our post-war military research. As Operation Overcast transitioned to its more commonly used name, Operation Paperclip, over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, technicians, and their families were brought to the United States. Some of the most notable scientists recruited through Operation Paperclip included Wernher von Braun, who employed his rocket technology expertise to help develop the U.S. space program. While stationed at Redstone Arsenal in the 1950s, von Braun and his team would develop the Redstone and Jupiter missiles. When they transferred to NASA in 1960, his team would use the same technology to develop the Saturn launch vehicles used in the Apollo program. Of the 1,600 scientists and technological experts brought over from Germany, their research resulted in over $10 billion in patents and innovated industrial processes. But not all the research was entirely altruistic. Some of the German scientists were incorporated into a much different research project, the Manhattan Project. In 1938, two German chemists, Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, discovered nuclear fission after splitting a uranium nucleus and producing barium. Expounding on their research, Lise Meitner and Otto Frisch created a theoretical design for creating an atomic bomb using fissionable material like uranium or plutonium. By 1939, Albert Einstein signed a letter to President Franklin Roosevelt, warning him of the potential development of, quote, extremely powerful bombs of a new type, and urging the U.S. government to acquire stockpiles of uranium to ensure this research didn't fall into the hands of the nation's enemies, such as Nazi Germany. Heeding Einstein's warnings, by 1942, the United States established secret research facilities across the country, including Oak Ridge Reservation in Tennessee, Hanford Site in Washington, and most notoriously, Los Alamos Laboratory in New Mexico. The scientists operating in these facilities were often given only compartmentalized information to ensure that no one person knew the full scope of what was being produced. Even so, their work demanded secrecy. The scientists often operated under false identities. They lived in isolated, guarded facilities that were surrounded by concertina wire and patrolled by military police. Any in or outbound mail was read before distribution to ensure research wasn't being shared with those outside the research base. Many of the researchers involved in the project had established jobs, government positions, or teaching roles prior to being recruited. Overnight, these individuals disappeared as they were transferred to the secretive facilities. Coworkers and extended family members noticed their absence. Inquiries were made and were often met with generalized answers that the missing scientists had been recruited for a government position and would be unavailable for the immediate future. The result of the Manhattan Project is well known. Research into the atomic bomb was successful, and on 6 and 9 August 1945, the United States dropped 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, respectively. It's not the result of the Manhattan Project that drove the research into this episode, but rather the ease by which our government recruited and essentially made scientists disappear from their regular lives. The United States is currently experiencing something similar. Over the past 3 years, 10 scientists in the field of nuclear research and jet propulsion have either gone missing or been found dead. These were scientists with some of the highest security clearances in the country, including 3 that worked for the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, 2 that worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory, 1 that was a government contractor at the Kansas City National Security Campus, which provided oversight of sensitive assets within the U.S. nuclear weapons arsenal, and a retired Air Force Major General who formerly commanded the Air Force Research Laboratory in Albuquerque, New Mexico. What makes these cases particularly interesting is that those that went missing left all their personal effects behind, including vehicle keys, cell phones, wallets, and even prescription glasses. Specifically, 2 of the cell phones were reset to factory settings. The reason that is noteworthy is because tracking cell phones is one of the primary techniques used by federal law enforcement when trying to locate missing people. These disappearances have piqued the curiosity not just of news outlets, but of the U.S. Congress. On 18 April, House Oversight and Government Reform Committee Chair James Comer of Kentucky announced that the committee would open an investigation into these deaths and disappearances. While authorities have not confirmed an official connection between the scientists, when interviewed, Comer stated, "We're very concerned about this. This is a national security concern. This would suggest that something sinister may be happening." The committee will seek briefings from the Pentagon, FBI, Department of Energy, and NASA as it looks for answers. The White House spokesperson confirmed its commitment to seeking the truth, stating, "In light of the recent and legitimate questions about these troubling cases, the White House is actively working with all relevant agencies and the FBI." Though the information uncovered may ultimately not be shared with the public, there is a growing interest in discovering any connection between these missing and deceased people. This is where this episode is going to shift into the realm of speculation. Without any firm information about these seemingly isolated occurrences, then all that can be done is to examine data and provide a possible explanation. When exploring the scientist's area of expertise, nuclear fission, jet propulsion, and experimental physics, the overlapping Venn diagram is small and lends itself to one particular solution: a modernization of the United States nuclear arsenal. In the 2025 federal budget, the Department of Defense allocated $1 trillion over the next 10 years toward the modernization of the nuclear arsenal. The Congressional Budget Office projected the cost to include $357 billion to operate and sustain current nuclear forces, $309 billion to modernize nuclear delivery systems, $72 billion to modernize facilities, $79 billion to modernize command and control elements, and $129 billion to cover unexpected additional costs. One of the largest costs is updating the nuclear delivery systems. The current deployment system for our nuclear arsenal is the Minuteman III Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, or ICBM. First designed in 1970, the Minuteman III was created as a major deterrent during the Cold War. With the range of just over 8,000 miles, the ICBMs can reach most targets in Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America. However, the nuclear arsenal is still reliant on the ICBM models of the 1970s, which are now 50-year-old delivery systems. It isn't the range, though, that limits the capability of these missiles. ICBMs operate by launching the missile into space, reaching speeds of approximately 2.5 miles per second, and reaching altitudes between 90 to 250 miles. Passing through high altitude limits fuel consumption, allowing the rocket to reach more distal targets. Over the past 50 years, the technology behind ballistic missile defense systems has expanded. Using radar and satellite imagery, the ballistic defense systems of modernized countries allow them to track ICBM trajectories and intercept the ballistic missiles before they can reach their target. As ICBMs become less effective and are more easily countered, the use of them as a nuclear deterrent wanes. A modern counter to the strength of the ballistic defense system is hypersonic missiles. Hypersonic weapons are defined as missiles that travel above 5 times the speed of sound and can travel and maneuver during atmospheric flight. The primary difference between the ICBM and the hypersonic missile is the trajectory. While ICBMs rely on high arches for their flight path, which makes them susceptible to satellite tracking, hypersonic missiles remain in the atmosphere, making it difficult to intercept. A 2025 Defense and Security Monitor report stated that the Army's long-range hypersonic weapon is designed to achieve a range exceeding 1,725 miles. That is far shorter than the ICBM range of 8,000 miles, which means the hypersonic missile capabilities are limited to launches from ships, submarines, or planes in relative proximity to the target. As a result, the largest obligation in the modernization of the nuclear arsenal would be to produce delivery systems with larger range and features that counter ballistic missile defense systems. Again, this is speculation, but overcoming the range limitations while managing a higher nuclear payload is exactly the type of work that would require a combination of nuclear scientists, jet propulsion experts, and theoretical physicists. And a $1 trillion budget over the next 10 years is exactly the kind of funds required to further that research. The United States has a history of acquiring scientists and sequestering them from their former lives as they work on top-secret projects. Were that the case here, then there is little to no chance that the Oversight Committee will release their findings to the public. The alternative reason for these missing people and suspicious deaths is that a foreign government is creating their own Operation Paperclip, seeking to recruit nuclear and propulsion experts from the United States. And those that refuse to assist are, in turn, murdered. I was hesitant to include this as a primary option, because this implies a significant network of foreign agents operating within the United States, without our knowledge, and with access to the highest levels of classified data. And that solution is more terrifying than the first. If our government is conducting secretive research, then it's worth remembering that the last time our nation isolated scientists, we created bombs capable of killing 214,000 Japanese. Let's hope that this time around, the government is working on something a bit more benevolent. Thank you for tuning in.